Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host and head witch, Miss Solaris, BlueRaven at the helm this evening. You've just listened to my new customized bumper, of course. And thank you to Vaux St. Clair and the goth rock band Angels of Liberty for that. If you'd like to check out their music, it's at angelsofliberty.com out of the UK. And I also want to give a shout out to everybody at Revolution Radio, staff, producers, listeners, chat room, and thank everyone for tuning in tonight. We are 100% listener supported, so if you like what you're hearing, please click on the donate button. We appreciate your support. And thank you for any contribution you can make to this excellent station. And also a reminder that for anyone interested in purchasing my documentary DVD called Eye of the Remote, A Disclosure of Covert Technology, I'm cleaning out my inventory and have my DVD on sale for half off on Amazon.com. So if you're interested in that DVD, now would be a good time to pick up a copy. And that sale is on throughout throughout January only. Okay? And you are listening to Studio A. And my special guest this evening has been on my show before and is always a fascinating guest with much vision, insight, and education beyond what most people perceive as reality. John Stormm has an incredible book available called Practical Witchery, available on Bookrix, and that's Bookrix. And his YouTube page is Stormm53. John was born in 1953 in a family of hereditary witches that count their ancestry all too many centuries ago in ancient Tara. He was raised and trained in the craft as the only male witch in his family by his grandmother. He now has grandchildren of his own. He began serious martial arts training in 1963. His sensei became his father figure. He strove for perfection, holding a second-degree black belt in Mas Oyamas Karate and a master's ranking in Chinese Kenpo. By the early 1970s, between training for tournaments and running his own small chain of studios, he took radio and TV broadcasting at El Paso Community College in Colorado Springs, Colorado. This gave John his first good taste of journalism. 30-plus years later, in dying to write some of these experiences in a book, he wrote an entire series on the Witch Clan theme. These are character-driven stories with true-to-life characters and experiences melded into an entertaining fantasy. His first full-length novel in the series is Matriarch of the Witch Clan. He and his family sponsor and are registered as Witches of the World at the Witch's Voice, witchvox.com, and can be found in their archives. For the longest time, he kept his MK Ultra exposure rather low-key. It's that it always seems to be too much for people to get their heads around, and it's no fun drawing out those experiences for them. Even then, his craft is as much a part of him as breathing. And please welcome John Stormm to the show this evening. Hi, John.
Hello.
It's so good to have you on tonight. Thank you for being on the show. Welcome.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's just great. It's great to hear your voice, too. And we have lots to discuss tonight. And so let's talk about what you've been working on, and also the dimensionality and perceptions that I know you have a YouTube video out on. And let's get wrapped up in that.
Okay. Yeah, actually, there's two. There's part one and part two. They started getting kind of long there, and I had to split it in half. Mm-hmm. It'd be close to about 2 hours of kind of a video lecture, so to speak. It gives a lot of basics. I mean, ties things like quantum physics and add in with magic, which is essentially just a catch-all term for stuff we don't know.
There you go.
It amazes the people who don't know. Yeah, it's magic. The people who do, well, obviously understand something about what's going on, and I try to build a basis to give people some understanding to get a better handle. Holding your blankets up over your head and saying I don't believe in spooks doesn't really take care of the problem, or it even if it's not a problem, it doesn't educate you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't enlighten you as to what's going on and why they're there to begin with. And my whole purpose behind that was to kind of show a little bit about behind the scenes. And there's so much material available. It's just a matter of tying it all together so people understand this relates to this, which relates to this, which relates to this, and all of this. This isn't tinfoil hat stuff. This is actual science, and any science that's sufficiently advanced from the people who's watching it is perceived as magic. Mm-hmm. And usually when you say you're a witch, to most people they think you're somebody backwards and ignorant and superstitious, and that can be the case in some cases, but it's not always the case, and not traditionally the case either.
No, not at all. I consider them to be very much into high alchemy and higher consciousness, on many different levels. But when you talk about dimensionality, if you can kind of give a description, what does that entail?
It entails a great deal. What I do in the course of the video lectures on YouTube is well, for one, I try to tie people who have a dimensional personality. There's the one-dimensional personality, and I picture them kind of like a single point of light. It's the spoiled little princess changing the light bulb that just kind of holds on, and the whole world revolves around her until it screws in. These are the people. That's their consciousness. That's their soul. You have to understand your consciousness is your soul. You don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. And when that goes down or anything like that, the soul is still there. That's why you have an aura. And basically part of the things that I tie in these lectures is how all of this fits into the greater picture. Then there's the two-dimensional personalities, or the two-dimensional souls, where you're either Democrat, Republican, gay, straight, male, female, you this or that, and anything in between those 2 points is shades of gray. They don't really have much color or much depth. You're just one of these things or the other. If those kind of people, when they know other people, they don't really know other people. You're either the guy or the gal or something. You're the Democrat, you're the liberal or something like that. You got a little tag, and basically you don't really exist beyond that tag. Anything of depth of you is just beyond their perception. They're only two-dimensional. Then there's the three-dimensional types, and they kind of got a little handle, a little bit of depth going, but they have no. It's a little bit stilted. They don't always line things up, because actually we live in a 4D world. We have 3 dimensions of space: length, breadth, width, and one of time, or space-time. And meet me at this latitude, at this length, at this longitude, this width, and at this height. I'm on the 3rd floor. But if you don't get there by 2 o'clock, you won't meet me. You won't be able to connect, or it's like when you're shooting skeet, the thing goes out, in order to intersect it, you have to take the time and space into consideration to make that connect. Now, 4-dimensional people, they're probably the best in this particular realm of existence. They're the ones that get their ducks in a row. They're aware of time. They use their time. They connect with other people on that. But a really healthy soul in this particular world that we live in today would be 5D, not 4D. This is a person that connects with their dreams, that has visions, that feels eyes on the back of their head, and this goes a little bit beyond the 4D and regular organs. In the 4D world and the 3D world, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. In a 5D world, you have each dimension that you add to it, you have a greater degree of freedom and mobility. And in a 5D world, the shortest distance between 2 points is a fold in space. You just fold it in half, and those 2 points are touching now. They're not far apart at all. You just step from one to the other. And in the 4D world, time is a linear thing. It goes in one direction only, and you're kind of stuck in the current of it. In a 5D world, in the course of your dreams and your visions, you can go forward. You can go backwards even before the time you were born and see things and understand things and experience things that you wouldn't any other way. Well, quantum physicists maintain, and mathematicians maintain, that there's at least 10 dimensions, possibly 11. Interestingly enough, they call the 11th one the M dimension, for mystery or magic, as it were. But so your reality, when people think about moving to another dimension, it's not like going to another place. You have one dimension, one single point on your body, that little mole there, that one little cell, that's 1 point, one-dimensional. You've got length and width. See, all of those dimensions exist in one place at the same time. You have 4D going on right now all the time. But the fact is there's actually 10D going on, and in your body and around you right now. You just don't perceive them all.
Mm-hmm.
And like most people, they're disconnected from their empathy. That's your part of your 5D. That's when you understand that the other person has experienced some sense of loss. You don't do the cruel things that most other people do because you can feel for them. Excuse me. Everybody else, they don't have that. They've been disconnected from it.
Mm-hmm.
So anything they do goes. Hey, it didn't hurt them a bit. They don't feel a thing. Yeah, it's perfectly all right. Let's drone the hell out of those suspected terrorists over there. Well, they got wives, they got children, and nobody thinks about that. Well, that doesn't concern me. We got a suspected terrorist. You mean to tell me we got a guy over there with a rag wrapped around his head that doesn't like Americans, and you blow the shit out of him and his family? And you wonder why he doesn't like you? And this is a crime? People aren't connected. They're so disconnected, they're not a healthy soul anymore. So in the course of this dimensionalities, I try to pull together how all these things kind of interrelate. When you do drop it, we all talk about ghosts. I'll talk about fairies, demons, spirits. They all exist in one plane or another. They all exist right here and now in the room with you at this very moment. The fact you don't perceive them doesn't mean they're not there. And each of those things, when it's in the room, I at one point or a couple points probably in the course of my little lecture there, described some of those paranormal programs, Ghost Mind, Ghost Hunters, and stuff like that. And they got all this neat equipment. They got the K2 meters to monitor the EM band. And the thing is, when you're in a house that doesn't have any power on, if there's not power going through the lines and there's no electromagnetic energy in the house, at least by physical causes that you can point to, which means that the electromagnetic energy is coming from something else. And if it peaks really high, you feel it. Even though you're not aware of it, you may have a feeling of being watched. It may be a good feeling. It may be a bad feeling, but it affects you. It's there. It's in the room, covering you. It's a ghost. Is it a ghost of a human being? It could be. It could be a spirit of something else, but it's extra dimensional. It could be the spirit of a little gray alien for all the hell you know, and that's just as valid as anything else. And and like I say, with these little gizmos and stuff that they got, they can measure that there is something there. Before it's just a feeling. Am I feeling? And they're not. Well, you've been so disconnected, you don't. You're willing to doubt your own senses, and and you can argue, well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just in my head. But if it's peeking on the EM meter there, it's not in your head. It's in the room. Mm-hmm. So,
right. And did you say it spiked also? I think you mentioned that in your YouTube video.
Pardon?
The measurement spikes a little bit. So that's one of the indicators insofar as the electromagnetic.
Oh, yeah. And I even use a bar magnet at one point and kind of trick it or fox it. Because it has its... Now, when you look at that bar magnet, it has length, width, and depth. It's 3D, isn't it? But there's more to it that defines it than just the 3D. There's the magnetic property, the polarity of it. And that's true of people and spirits. There's a polarity to them. It's another dimension. It's not something else that you go someplace else to be in the 11th dimension. It's right there and part of you and part of everything that you're handling and dealing with. The fact that your eyes are closed to it doesn't mean anything as compared to it being there. And I use the bar magnet analogy, and at one point in there, I think I used some video. I got a bar magnet that I hang in my living room, and for one, it tells me sometimes the magnetic North Pole will shift a little bit, and the magnet will shift with it. It also tells me sometimes now certain types of spirits. Now this gets really interesting, and I didn't cover that. It's one of those things that I wanted to say something about. NASA scientists used to use the term for gremlins. When their technology would start glitching, they'd say it was gremlins. Yeah. And it's a certain kind of spirit that does affect on the EM band that messes with electronics or, hard drives and stuff like that. And it's like, well, you can tune yourself. I had long ago been experimenting with some stuff called HemiSync. Monroe Institute has a whole series. That's a trademark of theirs, HemiSync, where you get both hemispheres of your brain synchronized. People tend to be left-brained or right-brained, and if you really want to be healthy, you got two halves. Use both of them equally, and you're more of a healthier. Your perceptions are better. There's a great deal to them. Well, in the course of that, you can adjust your frequency. You can get down by the Schumann frequency there, the Schumann resonance, and a little more in tune with the earth and nature and everything around you. You can advance that frequency or lower that frequency and get different effects. Well, you can do the same with, I was also showing the Kirlian photography. You can affect your own aura and the resonance of that, and you can affect it a little bit so it's even on the magnetic scale. And I do that with my hand with the bar magnet. I can confuse it, the polarity, by just enhancing or intensifying my own field around it, where the bar magnet's confused. And you think, well, okay, you get to see a little bit about how our fields interrelate. Now, I am the ghost of a living man. When I take off astral projection, I am the ghost or the spirit of a living man, not a dead person, a living person. I am still an energy field. I could be picked up with a K2 meter if I'm in the room and you don't perceive me outright. I can affect things. I can affect your PC. I can affect the bar magnet, if I'm around that frequency. I got to change a little bit for that to pick me up. In AM radio, you can generate static or when you get close to the antenna, give it either improve the reception or make it worse just by your field interacting with the field of the radio.
Right. That's a good point you make, John, because you don't have to be dead to interfere with these electronics, if you're astral traveling or projecting yourself elsewhere, right?
Right. Because you are a field. You are energy. You are... I show the atoms. I get into the atomic structure of things. Like an atom is 99.99999% empty space. If you were to take all the particles of the atom and take all of the empty space from them, scientists calculate that if you did this for the whole universe, that the mass of all those particles together would be about the size of a small marble. The substance of the universe is not mass. It's not matter. It's consciousness that defines those atoms, defines how many electrons are going around this thing. And when you got like charges and even when you get to fooling with the magnets, like charges repel each other, opposite charges attract each other, and you got these spinning around this nucleus. It's like, why don't they just fly off somewhere or collapse in on itself? Because there's a consciousness. That empty space, it isn't full of air because the air molecules are too big to fit in there. We're talking about smaller than that. And but consciousness permeates it perfectly well. The consciousness of the Creator is in there, but that's not all that's in there. There's the consciousness of lesser gods, archangels. People got all kinds of names for these things: fey spirits, demons, even human spirits. Your human spirit occupies your body. Now, the Creator is also holding your atomic structure together. It's like a hologram otherwise. And you're in there, and you could be possessed by a legion of demons. That would be 1,000 other spirits could occupy all those spaces between all of those atoms because you are 99.99999% empty space.
Mm.
But it's not empty. There's something in it. There's a field. And with the Curlian photography and the things like that, we can point to that. We can establish that. It's no longer just mystic talk like who can understand, and it's just one of those things, and you got to be a 33rd degree Mason to understand it. And to some people, 33rd degree is barely out of junior high.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. But I think you're right. And insofar as the quote unquote in the possession aspect of it, what would allow somebody to have that much demonic possession in their body? I did this by accident one time. It was a long time ago. It was back in the early 90s. A friend of mine named Kyle, there was this blonde woman that was kind of stalking him. She was like taking notes or something, and he wanted to know what the hell's going on with her. What is the deal? Mm. And so I started stalking him astrally. And he lived in Toronto, and it's just kind of across the lake from me at the time. And I said, okay, I'll go. And sure enough, she showed up, and I followed her home. And I zip up, and I come in through the window. And to me, it's kind of like a dream. It's almost like a dream. People don't see me. I mean, I see me, but they don't see me. And I'm standing in her apartment. She comes in, and she goes up to the closet, and I guess she's going to change clothes. Opens it up. There's a full-length mirror in the inside of the closet door, and she's taken off. She's kind of wearing a gray wool, I want to say business suit, but it's like skirt and suit jacket and very smart attire. And she just happened to stand in the same place where I was standing. And I look in the mirror, and I see myself as this woman. And, I freak out, and I jump back. It's like, even your spirit can possess somebody else if they're weaker than you or allow you in. Now, this is not to say that you can hold on for very long. It's going to get tiring. It's kind of like holding on to them. You could hold on to a 7-year-old kid, and you say, well, how long can you hold on to him indefinitely? You're going to get tired of it after a while. You're a lot bigger and stronger than he is, but over time, you're going to get tired. And this is what happens a lot in the possessions when people do get demonically possessed. They have their lucid periods. There's times when the demon or the spirit has to back off a little bit, and that other personality, the personality of the person, gets to come to the forefront for a while. But they try to wear them down bodily so that they don't have much fight left in them. It's almost like catching a fish. So any spirit, your spirit, you could do it. How long you can hold on to them, that's another story. In the case of the demonic possession and that, well, sometimes it's better. It's easier for them if there's several of them jumping you. Mm-hmm. It's easier, they can take turns holding you under while they take over your body, and you experience usually blackouts in time. The same thing happens to a lot of people that's abducted by grays and such. Mm-hmm. And an interesting story, there was an interview with an alien that was like decades ago, a gray alien named Errol, who mentioned that their bodies are artificial. They just inhabit them. It's just a soul in an artificial body that's made not to breathe. It doesn't have to breathe. It doesn't have to eat, and they can use it to control these craft and do all this other kind of stuff. And it was a very interesting viewpoint that this particular creature gave. And they were describing this as a prison planet because of the souls of so many that are here, that are trapped here. And in essence, that's what they do here. They try to keep you all materially, everything material is what's important to you. And it's actually a small, small part of your multiverse around you. Mm-hmm. And if you can't see past that, you never grow past it. They keep you, locked in this 3 and 4D. You never see the rest of it. You're completely ignorant of it. I used to notice when I worked at the hospital, there'd be so many, there's always ghosts in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Most of them don't stay for very long, but people
pass on, and they are standing around wondering, what the hell happened? What am I doing here? Where's here? What's going on? They don't know what to do. They're not the least bit prepared, and they don't care if they're religious or not.
Right.
I remember there was this nun that stayed there for like 4 months, and that after she kicked the bucket in this one ward I was working in. She was kind of helpful for a lot of the people that were comatose, but she didn't really have an idea where she was supposed to go for a while until eventually, I guess, she got a tap on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they get disoriented, I would imagine, if they're not spiritually prepared for the transfer.
Yeah, it's like finding yourself in a strange city, where nobody speaks your language, and you can't read nothing, understand anything what's going on. You're just there. You don't know where to go, what to do. People can't understand you. You can't understand them. You don't have the right kind of currency to get anything, and you don't know whether you need anything or not.
Mm-hmm.
And time acts a little bit funny for them too. They don't have their concept of time is radically altered. So a lot of times they don't know how much time is actually going by. I'm kind of like that while I'm alive.
Yeah, and the illusion of time, right? Yeah, it's a benchmark of measure anyway. But it seems like, if they're not prepared on so many different levels of consciousness, then it would be a little more difficult for them to make it to their destination without some kind of assistance. Did you ever see that movie called Carnival of Souls?
No, I haven't.
Well, if you ever catch it, it's a really old movie. But it's about a woman who transfers out, and she's kind of in between the spaces of life and death. It's really wild. But from what you're describing, yeah, it's kind of like that, where you're phasing in and out of worlds and dimensions, and it's very interesting. So
that would be interesting, because I've experienced quite a bit of that. I've had, and I haven't written a lot of it. Well, I have a little bit that I call rifting. And you end up in, parallel world is not like a parallel dimension. I mean, it's a part of the dimensionality, but it's really tough to describe. It's even the physicists talk about it. Electrons are only there. There's no such thing as one electron. It's always in relation to one particular nucleus. However, the only time it's there is when it's observed. Otherwise, it's dimension hopping too. Now, at one point, I was pointing to, okay, let's take a look at the Creator. We're going to call him God. We're going to call him the Big G God, because there's all kinds of gods. There's all kinds of things greater than ourselves, and consciousness is far greater than our own, but they're not like the ultimate. They're not what's holding all of this together. But we all come from the same place. Who is holding all of this together? But the Bible, there's things I like about the Bible and things I don't like about the Bible. But I like a lot of people's holy writings, so I'm not just stuck on the one book. I don't just have that one book in my library. I got a lot of books in my library, and I understand one thing about these people call them mystics, and that is they're all understanding a bit of the same thing. They're just saying it differently in context of their time and their culture. Mm-hmm. And when they talk about God being all-knowing, well, okay, if your Creator is the one that's holding each of those atoms together, people want to see God, they look within. It's easier to see him when you look within than when you look without, because there's just so much out there to distract you. But within, you kind of get down to the smallest item, right down to the atomic level, and what's holding that atom, keeping that thing from just going out or collapsing in on itself. It's a consciousness that defines it. Mm-hmm. It says, let there be this, let there be a hydrogen atom, and there it is. One electron spinning around the nucleus. Let there be a helium, and now there's two electrons. Let there be and you can go on and on with it. Let these things have a structure. Let them have this. Let them have that. This Genesis account. Now, if you take that and just say, okay, that's somebody a couple thousand years ago writing something that they understood, somebody outside of this world made them to understand. And they thought it was important enough to write down on paper. Paper's very expensive. Reading, writing, all that kind of stuff's very expensive. So if they're taking the time to do it, this is not just some little foolish thing they're doing. They're trying to tell you something that they found really important. And he's all-knowing. He knows everything. It's like, well, how can you get away from him when everything is connected?
Mm-hmm.
The atomic structure of you, the air you're breathing, that's made of atoms, and they're all defined by the same consciousness. And the water and everything around you, we're all connected by the same field, the same consciousness. And you wonder, well, how do people know these things? But they do. They are obviously connected. There are connections. And for this creator, it's like there's no place you can go to get away from him, to hide from him. You know, it says he knows when even the sparrow falls. It's kind of, well, he would if that was what that consciousness of the creator was. Instead of picturing him as being some cranky old white man on a throne up in the clouds, picture him as he is. It's difficult, but it's not impossible. He's everywhere at once. There's no place you can go that he's not. He knows everything. Well, anybody, I did an example, actually somebody else had done it, Flat World. They wrote a book, Mr. and Mrs. Flat, and they're little two-dimensional creatures, and as you look at them as a three-dimensional creature, when Mr. Flat looks at Mrs. Flat, all he sees is a line, just a straight line, because he's looking at her end on, no length, no width or depth or anything like that. He just sees a line. But when you look down from 3 dimensions at Mr. and Mrs. Flat, you can see she has curly hair, a dress, and 2 eyes, 2 noses, and a mouth. You can know them more intimately than they know themselves. So imagine somebody with a little more grasp on their dimensionalities than you have, knowing you better than you can know yourself. Or if you're 5D, sometimes you know other people better than they know themselves. You may never have met that man any time in your lifetime, but the minute you come within so many feet of him, you know he's a bad dude or he's a good dude or something. There's that added extra dimensionality, and that's where if we take that steps further, we can give that to the Creator. Now it says he knows he's the Alpha, the Omega. He knows the beginning from the end, and there's nothing you can do that's going to surprise him. Now imagine, when the quantum physicists talk about all these added parallel worlds, imagine a world where on this day, instead of making a right turn, you made a left turn instead. And a lot of writers and stuff and have taken on these little concepts. What would happen if you went this way instead of that way? If Hitler won World War II instead of us? There's been thousands of things written on it. Well, imagine a creator where the quantum physicists now take things as, okay, this all becomes limitless possibilities and probabilities. They have a better way of putting it than I'm saying it, but essentially it boils down to that. And, there's these endless parallel worlds. And it's kind of like no matter what you would have decided, the Creator God would have already known it because he's already seen it happen on another parallel. He's seen that thing play out where you made this decision instead of that decision. And, it's like there's no way, and this, when the religious, and not the religious, just the people that wrote these things originally, religion gets two-dimensional. Things turn to, stained glass icons instead of reality, and these are kind of what I try to point to in the dimensionalities, and how they work and how they relate. In the second one, I try to keep them in small pieces so they're easier to understand than the concepts I'm putting about now. I showed about spellcraft and the wild hunt because at one point I'm showing orbs and how this orb activity is another thing that a lot of paranormal investigators use. You use digital photography and you can pick up the orb activity in an area. And when you got a lot of it, you feel it. People around know, animals know, they understand. And, and it one point I had taken the camera down through the hospital where I worked at, and, sure enough, there's orb activity in the hallways. There's always spirits in the hallways. And I went out to, we used to call it Camp Witchwood, where we used to camp out, and I'd teach witchery around the campfire, show a lot of these things while I was out there. And plus, it was just a great place. A friend of mine had a place kind of dedicated to Gaia. I'm a Danaan witch, Danu, Gaia, same thing, and just different, called by different names. And she had a problem where, people knew she was a witch. She had a big wooden statue to Gaia in the front yard, and, people want to persecute the witch, and they were poisoning her horses, and they'd get out and run her goats into the electric fence until it would kill them. And, so we got out and we decided, okay, we're going to try to catch these people or discourage them from messing with her and persecuting her. And it was kind of hard to, there was like 70 acres, and it was hard to be everywhere at once, and a lot of it's wooded. And so I made these stone wards. And then I called a wild hunt, called Fairies in, because I got very upset when one of the fillies was killed. And we had them, I don't have any copies of it, but when the filly died of the poisoning in the barn, there was a digital camera in there, and you could see the orbs coming up and dancing around the body and everything. It was inspiring to see. I wish we had footage of it, but I didn't. But I had of them later, and I called a wild hunt. Now, instead of, when I was a young witch, I did a wild hunt. I got, challenged for a wild hunt, got naked, ran from one area that we wanted for a hunt to the other, and I was the one to be hunted, and then you become the hunt master after that for life. What I did was I called up a wild hunt, and I says, okay, here's the game. Anybody trespassing, anybody that's on this property that shouldn't be on this property, they're your lawful prey. You can have them, you can do with them what you want. And essentially, when they came onto the property, they got an extra squirrel in the attic. And these critters just had a ball. They're mischievous. They made life hell for them. They, what they perceived and what they seen after that just terrified them to no end. And this was great sport as far as the fairies were concerned. But upon blowing the trumpet and then taking the digital pictures, you see the fairies, you see the pictures of, okay, there's loads of these orbs all over the place in these woods. And then after blowing the trumpet, you see all those orbs line up into troops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw those on your video. It's amazing.
Yeah, and you can understand, okay, now you see trooping fairies. Well, you've heard about this written from, fairy tales and stuff from your great-great-great-grandmother and stuff like that in Ireland, and you think, oh, they're superstitious, they're this, they're that, or the other thing. It's like, no, they know exactly what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. When old-time alchemists would talk about changing lead into gold, the atomic structure of both of those elements is a difference of 1, atomic weight of 1. Mm-hmm. And you can, physicists can change lead into gold today, but it's overly expensive to do, with lasers and linear accelerators, 1 molecule at a time. Change. It makes it a lot more expensive than it would be to just go out and dig the stuff up from the ground to get the gold, the energy it takes. But the thing is they understood that.
Right.
They just didn't use the same technology. They had another technique. It'd be interesting to know what that technique was exactly. It didn't involve lasers or linear accelerators, mm-hmm. but they knew something. They were able, their handle on their spirituality, their handle on their dimensionality was enough where they can encourage that stray electron to go someplace else or disappear entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's scientifically feasible. It's like they knew that. Mm-hmm. They did that. They talk about that, but people say, well, that's it's superstition. It's this, it's that, and it's kind. But there's a basis for it. Mm-hmm. There is a scientific basis.
Yeah, I wonder if it's more like frequency based. It almost seems like it would be. But yeah,
right.
Pretty cool. Yeah, it's amazing. It's quite the fabric that people don't notice, from day to day as they walk through this earth or on this earth.
Well, the people, the powers that be on this earth, we take those 13 luminous weirding families, they don't want you to perceive beyond it. They want you to think that their money is the most important thing you could get, or gold, or items, or material is the most important. They want your consciousness focused in, they say, the right here and now, but it isn't entirely the right here and now. It's just a very small portion of the right here and now. You're only occupying, okay, if there's 10 dimensions or more, I feel there's probably a lot more than that, but if there's only 10 dimensions, you're only living in, it's like having a 10-room house, but you're only stuck in 3 rooms and you never see the other 7.
Right. Yeah.
And you never step outside of it. And that's the kind of prison that everybody's in today, or almost everybody. Like I say, you should be, if you're a healthy individual, you should be seeing 5 rooms of that house at least, and have some inkling that a 6th and 7th is beyond there. Mm-hmm. And then you can move from there. But until you do, till you get out of this 3D and 4D stuff, you don't have any options of all the rest. And once you get into the rest, so much more becomes available to you. Mm-hmm. Now you walk, you run, or you're ready to fly, and you won't need a broom to do it.
Exactly.
And this is what I'm kind of hoping for, the kind of things that I do when I write these books and make these videos, is it is important that you learn what I'm telling you in those, but what's really important is once you got that and what you start learning from there on out, now you're going to grow again. See, everybody's growth has been stunted by education, that's not education, it's indoctrination, mm-hmm. and religion, and everything being 2D is it could be you're either this or you're that, or you're one of those liberals or you're a conservative, or you're this or that. It's like everybody puts this label on you, and you got to be this, and this limits you to this little stereotype. And any part of you that kind of creeps or bleeds out from just that little label, well, it's completely unrecognized and unseen. It doesn't exist. Like UFOs don't exist. Everybody sees them everywhere. They take pictures of them all the time. But you wonder, do they exist?
Yeah.
Is there intelligent life out there? Well, there isn't right here.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, doesn't it seem like fear holds people back? Fear and superstition, I would say, from even ascending out of their own matrix. I mean, a lot of people are afraid of being more psychic. They're afraid of accessing other dimensions other than the one they exist in. At least that's what I've seen in observation.
But they're going to get let loose because your physical, and I hate to limit it to just that, but just the body that you're living in right now is not the sum total of you, mm-hmm. or anybody else. You ever notice if you've ever had to attend the funeral of a loved one or a friend, and they got the open casket and the body's in there, and you can kind of see, there's old Fred. Mm-hmm. And it's like, Fred ain't in there no more. I mean, it's very obvious. Everything that made him Fred, you kind of expect him to get up and talk to you, but he don't. Everything that made him Fred isn't there anymore. It's just a thing that looks like him. It could be a wax dummy for all you know, but it isn't Fred anymore. Fred is someplace else. And that reality is the biggest part of our, we're only here for, Solomon said, interesting thing, because most people figured, like, well, medical science, we never lived to 70 years old. Back in the Dark Ages, they only lived to about 30 or 40 and thought that was old. And it's kind of, well, Solomon said the years of a man's life will be 70, and that's by reason of strength he lived to be older. And average life expectancy 3,000 years ago, 70.
Mm-hmm.
And most of my friends died before 50.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of going into the Dark Ages again, the ignorance. Unless you got the money or something to buy it, you don't have it, or maybe Obamacare or something. But the thing is this is such a dreadfully, your soul, your awareness, that consciousness that's you is eternal. It's like, it can't be, it's created, it comes off of the Father of all spirits, the Creator himself. It's just a little piece of himself, a little spark of himself that he's given free will, and he's going to experience life through you and everybody else in the little sparrow that he's the cosmos experiencing itself. Everybody's got free will and the ability to make all their own choices with whatever they're faced with, as they're faced with, from the perspectives that they're faced with. And you're allowed to grow and become what you're going to become. But there's people here, little gods, I call them, and essentially that's what they're playing, and that's the way they think of themselves. Are keeping you. You're here to make them rich. You're here to grandify them. Every time you pass one of these dollars from one person to another, a percentage of that has to go to them, of that transaction, every time. Because if you're not paying tax on it, it's an illegal thing. You know why prostitution's illegal in New York State? Because they don't get paid for it. I mean, the hooker gets paid for it, but these little gods don't get paid for it. However, in Nevada, you can go to the prostitute, and the little gods get paid for it, and that's what makes it legal. In some states where marijuana is legal, there's taxes on it. That means basically anytime you're paying for it, somebody else gets a piece of that transaction. And guess who it is? When they say you broke a law. Now, you're supposed to have the freedom to be able to do these things, but I was looking the wrong way at a one-way cop. Oh, man, there's going to be a $25 fine for that. Well, guess what? That gets paid to the bank. Mm-hmm. Everything you do gets paid to somebody, goes to somebody, and they want you focused. You've got to have a job, pay your taxes, get a home, pay more taxes. Interesting thing, you can still own that home and have it all paid off, but if you forget to pay the taxes on it 1 year, they'll take it away from you, like it wasn't yours at all. It was theirs. They were only loaning it to you, and you failed to pay them for the privilege of living there. Mm-hmm. They want to keep you locked as slaves in this, and everything is not for you, it's for them. Right. And these are the little gods, and I'm trying to kind of free people from the little gods. I'm trying to get them to see the bigger ones and the better ones that there are to see, and that they themselves are bigger and better than these little gods, and capable of a lot more once they shuck off the chains. Mm-hmm. People are afraid of dying. Now, me, I have been very, very sick, especially the last couple of years, and last year in particular. I couldn't guarantee from one day to the next whether I'm really going to get up the next morning, ever again. But I having been as an MK Ultra for almost all my life, I've been in situations where I was pretty sure I was going to die anyway. So I've kind of got to the point where I accept that as a part of my life, but I also know that's not the end. So I'm not afraid of it. And I've been so close to it and kind of crossed that line a little bit and blurred that line more than a few times, where I'm not afraid of the idea that, the ketoacidosis or the stroke may take me again or whatever, and I may find myself out there or outside of this body and this thing becomes worm food or fertilizer. That's fine. It doesn't bother me. I'm not afraid of the unknown because it's not unknown to me. I don't see absolutely all of it, but I see enough of it to know there's something to step out onto.
Exactly.
And it's more liberating than this body is capable of.
Absolutely. And John, we're headed for a break real quick. We'll be right back with Ravenstar's Witching Hour. My special guest, John Stormm. Stay tuned.